The roast beef was overcooked again, but nobody mentioned it. We sat around my parents' mahogany dining table, the one Mom had saved for 3 years to buy, pretending everything was normal. Dad carved the meat with surgical precision, while Mom refilled wine glasses that weren't quite empty yet. Callista scrolled through her phone between bites, occasionally showing us photos of desert landscapes and crystal formations. The retreat center in Sedona is absolutely magical, she gushed, tilting her screen toward us. Look at this sunrise meditation spot. I can already feel my chakras aligning just looking at it. I pushed green beans around my plate, trying to avoid eye contact. For 2 weeks, I'd been carrying a secret that felt heavier each day. Every time someone mentioned money or the future, my stomach twisted into knots. 15,000 is a significant investment, Dad said, setting down the carving knife. But after everything you've been through with the breakup and losing your apartment, you deserve this reset. Exactly, Mom chimed in. Money comes and goes, but spiritual healing, that's priceless. Callista beamed, then turned to me with that expectant smile I knew too well. Ro, you mentioned last month that you'd help with the costs. I've been telling everyone how amazing my sister is for supporting my journey. The fork in my hand felt impossibly heavy. I'd never actually agreed to fund her retreat. When she first mentioned it, I'd made noncommittal sounds, and that's nice, while internally calculating whether I could afford it. But somehow, my silence had been interpreted as consent. About that, I started, my voice smaller than intended. The deposit is due tomorrow. Callista continued, pulling up her banking app. I just need you to transfer the money to my account. 15.5 total. 15.5. I blinked. I thought you said 15. Well, there are fees, and I need spending money for the gift shop. They have these incredible crystals blessed by indigenous shamans. Dad leaned forward. Rowena, you've been putting this off for weeks. What's the delay? The room went quiet except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. I could feel 3 pairs of eyes on me, waiting. My mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I can't transfer the money, I finally said. Mom's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. What do you mean, can't? I mean I don't have it anymore. The words tumbled out faster now. I bought something 2 weeks ago. Callista's phone clattered onto the table. You spent my retreat money. It wasn't your money, I said, though my voice shook. It was my savings. But you promised. I never promised anything. The words came out sharper than I intended. You assumed, and I didn't correct you, which was wrong, but I never actually agreed. Dad's jaw tightened. What exactly did you buy that was more important than helping family? I took a deep breath. Here it was the moment I'd been dreading. A house. Silence. Then Callista laughed, a short disbelieving sound. A house? You with what down payment? It's a foreclosure. In Riverside. I got it for $900. 900. Mom's voice pitched higher. What's wrong with it? It needs work, I admitted. A lot of work, but it's structurally sound. And you bought a crack house? Callista interrupted. You literally chose a crack house over my spiritual awakening. It's not a crack house. It's a fixer-upper. Dad removed his reading glasses and cleaned them slowly, his signature move when he was furious, but trying to stay controlled. So while your sister has been planning this retreat, counting on family support, you've been secretly house shopping. I didn't plan it. I saw the listing online and you thought only of yourself. Mom finished. As usual. That stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. I had been thinking of myself. For the first time in years, I'd made a decision without consulting the family committee, without weighing how it would affect everyone else's plans and feelings. And yes, it felt selfish. It also felt necessary. "I'm sorry about your retreat," I said to Callista, "but I'm not sorry I bought the house." Unbelievable. Callista stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood. "I told everyone at yoga class that my sister was funding my healing journey. Now I have to tell them I was wrong about my own family." "Maybe you shouldn't have told them anything before asking me directly," I said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That's enough," Dad said. "Rowena, if you want to make impulsive decisions and live like a college student forever, that's your choice. But don't expect us to bail you out when reality hits." "I'm not asking you to bail me out." "Good," Mom said crisply. "Because we won't." I looked around the table at Dad's disappointed frown, Mom's pursed lips, Callista's tears of frustrated rage. This was my family. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Instead, they looked at me like I'd committed an unforgivable sin. "I should go," I said, standing. "Yes," Mom replied without looking up. "You should." 3 days later, I noticed I wasn't getting notifications from the family group chat anymore. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then I realized I'd been removed. My cousin posted Easter brunch photos on Instagram, everyone gathered around Mom's table, laughing over mimosas and chocolate eggs. Everyone except me. The caption read, "Family is everything, missing some faces, but grateful for those who showed up." I stared at that post for longer than I care to admit, sitting in my car outside Home Depot with a cart full of cleaning supplies in my back seat. The rational part of my brain knew this was probably for the best. The emotional part felt like I'd been erased. My phone buzzed with a text from Callista. "Mom's making your grandmother's famous ham recipe for Easter. Too bad you chose a haunted house over family traditions." I screenshot the message, then deleted the original. Something told me I might need evidence later. The drive to Riverside took 45 minutes in weekend traffic. My new neighborhood wasn't picturesque chain-link fences, overgrown yards, and too many houses with boarded windows. But it wasn't dangerous either, just tired. Working-class families trying to make it work with what they had. My house sat at the end of a dead-end street, a small ranch-style building with good bones and terrible everything else. The previous owners had abandoned it 2 years ago, and the elements hadn't been kind. Peeling paint, a sagging porch, and windows that hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, breathing in the familiar scent of must and old wood. The electricity worked barely, and the plumbing was functional if you didn't mind the occasional weird noise from the pipes. It wasn't much, but it was mine. In the kitchen, I'd set up a folding table and chair as my temporary office. My laptop was open to a spreadsheet titled House Budget, filled with estimates for everything from roof repairs to new flooring. The numbers weren't encouraging. Even doing most of the work myself, I was looking at months of ramen noodles and canceled subscriptions. My phone rang. Aunt Corinne. "Hey, honey." Her warm voice filled the empty room. "I heard about the family dinner drama." "Let me guess Mom called you." "Callista posted about it on Facebook. Something about family betrayal and spiritual blockages." I groaned. "She put it on Facebook." "A very long post, with crying selfies." Corinne paused. "Want to tell me your side?" "So I did." I told her about the house, about feeling cornered at dinner, about being removed from the group chat like I was some stranger. Corinne listened without interrupting, making small sounds that somehow made me feel less crazy. "You know what your problem is," she said when I finished. "I'm selfish and irresponsible. You're finally growing a backbone, and they don't know how to handle it." That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "Rowena, sweetheart, you've been the family peacekeeper since you were 10 years old, always smoothing things over, always saying yes, always putting everyone else first. They're used to you being convenient. I wasn't being convenient. I was being a good daughter, a good sister. Were you, or were you being a doormat? The words hit harder than they should have, maybe because they weren't entirely wrong. The house sounds like a smart investment, Corinne continued. Property values in Riverside are climbing. Give it 5 years, and you'll probably double your money. If I can afford to fix it up, you will. You're resourceful. Always have been. She paused. Just don't let them guilt you into selling it to fund Callista's latest phase. Her latest what? Phase. Last year, it was the yoga teacher training she never finished. Before that, the photography business that lasted 3 months. Callista's always looking for something external to fix what's internal. I'd never thought about it that way. But she was right. Callista had a pattern of diving headfirst into new pursuits, convinced each one would transform her life, only to abandon them when reality set in. Should I call them? I asked. Try to smooth things over. Do you want to? I considered this. The old me would have already written a long apology text, begging for forgiveness for the crime of making an independent decision. But sitting in my empty house, surrounded by the smell of fresh possibilities, I realized I didn't want to apologize. No, I said. I don't think I do. Then don't. Let them sit with their feelings for a while. Sometimes people need to miss you to remember they love you. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started researching contractors. The roof definitely needed work, and the bathroom was a health hazard, but the hardwood floors under the old carpet were beautiful, and the kitchen had potential once I ripped out the avocado green appliances. As the sun set through my dirty windows, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: optimism. Not the forced kind I'd worn to family gatherings, but real hope. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that was entirely mine. My phone buzzed with another notification. Mom had posted Easter photos on Facebook with the caption, "Blessed to be surrounded by family who show up when it matters." I blocked her account and went back to my contractor research. The house became my education in everything I'd never learned. How to patch drywall, how to read electrical diagrams, how to negotiate with contractors who assumed I was an easy mark because I was a woman working alone. 6 weeks in, I'd managed to get the roof patched, the worst of the plumbing fixed, and the electrical brought up to code. My savings account was hemorrhaging money, but I'd also discovered I was handy with tools and surprisingly good at spotting when someone was trying to overcharge me. The neighbors had warmed up once they realized I wasn't a house flipper looking to gentrify the block. Mrs. Rodriguez next door brought me tamales when she saw me working late. The family across the street let me borrow their ladder in exchange for helping them move a couch. I was learning what community felt like when it wasn't built on obligation and guilt. My relationship with my family, meanwhile, remained frozen. Easter had come and gone without a word. Callista's Instagram showed she'd found alternative funding for her retreat, a GoFundMe that raised $3,000 and a payment plan with the center. Her posts from Sedona were all sunset meditations and gratitude journals, with captions about releasing toxic family patterns. I'd stopped checking her social media after she posted a video titled, "When Family Doesn't Support Your Growth," filmed in what looked like $1 million desert resort. One evening, as I was painting the bathroom a cheerful yellow, my phone rang. Unknown number. Rowena. It's Callista. I nearly dropped the paintbrush. Hi, I'm calling from the retreat center. We're not supposed to use our regular phones, but I wanted to talk to you. Okay. I set down the brush and stepped out of the bathroom, suddenly aware of how quiet my house was. I've been doing a lot of thinking and meditation and ayahuasca journeying. Ayahuasca. It's a plant medicine, very healing. It showed me some difficult truths about our family dynamic. Here it comes, I thought, the spiritual lecture about how I disrupted her energy. I realized I've been really entitled, she said. That was not what I expected. I mean, I literally assumed you'd pay for my retreat without even asking properly. Who does that, Callista? No, let me finish. I've been sitting in ceremony for 3 days, and I keep seeing this pattern where I expect everyone to take care of me, and you always did. So I never questioned it. I sat down on my newly refinished hardwood floor, phone pressed against my ear. The retreat is amazing, she continued, but I keep thinking about how I got here. I raised money by posting about how my family abandoned me, which was totally manipulative and probably illegal. Probably not illegal, but definitely not cool. I know. I'm going to return the GoFundMe money when I get home. Well, what's left of it. She paused. I miss you, Ro. I miss having someone who actually tells me the truth instead of just enabling my bullshit. I miss you too, I said, and realized I meant it. Can I see the house when I get back? I promise not to mock it on social media. It's still pretty rough around the edges. So am I. Apparently, we talked for another 20 minutes, really talked, not the surface level catch up conversations we defaulted to for years. She told me about the retreat, about realizing how much anxiety she'd been carrying, about starting to understand the difference between self care and self indulgence. I told her about the house, about learning to use power tools, about discovering I liked living alone. It felt like talking to the sister I'd known as a kid, before social media and family dynamics had turned us into performers playing roles we didn't really want. Mom and Dad are still pretty pissed, she warned before hanging up. I figured. They keep talking about consequences and learning lessons, but honestly, I think they're scared. Scared of what? That you figured out how to be happy without them. After she hung up, I sat on my floor for a long time, watching the evening light shift across my freshly painted walls. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had figured something out. But I was about to learn that my family's response to my independence would be more complicated than simple anger. 2 months after our phone call, Callista showed up at my door. Not with the designer luggage and entitled attitude I remembered, but with a single duffel bag and dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. I know I should have called, she said, standing on my newly repaired porch, but I didn't know where else to go. What happened? My roommate kicked me out. Turns out when you can't pay rent for 2 months because you spent your money on spiritual retreats, people get upset. I looked at her, really looked. The retreat glow had faded, replaced by something raw and more real. Her usual Instagram-ready appearance had given way to unwashed hair and yesterday's clothes. The couch folds out, I said, stepping aside. Really, just like that? Just like that, but we need ground rules. She nodded eagerly. Whatever you want. No social media content filmed in my house. No borrowing money. No bringing random people over without asking. And you help with groceries and utilities. Deal. She hugged me, and I was surprised by how fiercely she held on. Thank you. I promise I won't be a burden. You're not a burden. You're my sister, but you're also temporarily homeless. So let's not pretend this is a vacation. The first few days were awkward. Callista was used to having her own space, her own bathroom, her own way of doing things. My house was small, and I'd gotten accustomed to living alone. But slowly, we found a rhythm. She helped me sand down kitchen cabinets while I taught her how to use a power drill. We made dinner together, actual cooking, not the takeout and meal kits she usually relied on. In the evenings, We'd sit on the porch and talk about everything we'd been too busy or too proud to discuss before. I think I've been performing my whole life, she said one night, watching neighbors walk their dogs. Like, I don't even know what I actually enjoy anymore versus what gets good reactions online. What do you think you enjoy? She was quiet for a moment. I like plants. I always have. But it's not glamorous enough for content. And I like reading mystery novels. And I actually hate yoga, but I'm good at it and it photographs well. You hate yoga. So much. All that forced serenity makes me want to scream. I laughed. Then why do you teach it? Because people expect it from me now. The whole wellness influencer thing. She picked at the label on her beer bottle. I have 15,000 followers who think I'm this enlightened person with all the answers, but I can't even figure out how to pay my bills. Maybe that's the problem. What do you mean? Maybe you need to figure out who you are without an audience. It was a good conversation. It felt like progress, which is probably why I let my guard down. I should have known better. I woke up to the sound of my coffee maker brewing and assumed Callista was making breakfast. It was Saturday morning, and we'd planned to tackle the guest bathroom together, stripping old wallpaper and assessing the damage underneath. But when I padded to the kitchen in my ratty pajamas and house slippers, I found something else entirely. A ring light was set up by the window, casting stark white illumination across my countertopping. My mismatched dishes had been artfully arranged with props I didn't recognize, a bouquet of succulents, a leather-bound journal, a candle that smelled like expensive hippie stores. And in the center of it all was Callista, fully made up and perfectly styled, speaking earnestly into her phone camera. "And this is where my sister has been living," she was saying, her voice dripping with performative compassion. "As you can see, it's quite a transition from her old life." I stood frozen in the doorway, watching her pan the camera across my kitchen, the mismatched cabinets I was slowly refinishing, the vintage appliances I'd bought secondhand, the cheerful yellow walls I painted myself. "She's been so brave through this difficult time," Callista continued. "Really learning to live with less. You know it's been humbling for our whole family." "What the fuck are you doing?" Callista startled, nearly dropping her phone. The camera swung wildly before settling on my face specifically, my unwashed hair and coffee-stained pajamas. "Oh, good morning. Sunshine," she said brightly, never breaking character. "Everyone, this is my sister Rowena. Say hi. Ro, turn off the camera." "She's not a morning person." Callista laughed, tilting the phone away from me. "But look at how creative she's been with this space. Very minimalist chic." I walked over and firmly placed my hand over her phone lens. I said, "Turn it off." "Rowena, I'm trying to help by turning my life into content without asking. I thought you'd be grateful. My followers are super supportive. And your followers, did you tell them this is a recovery house? A homeless shelter? What exactly did you tell them?" Her face flushed. "I just said you were going through a rough patch and what? That I need charity. That my life is so pathetic it requires internet strangers' pity. That's exactly what it is." I was fully awake now, fury burning away any lingering grogginess. "You turned me into poverty porn for your wellness brand. I was trying to show resilience growth through adversity. You were trying to get engagement by exploiting my situation. Your situation." Her voice pitched higher, defensive. "You chose this situation. You chose this house over helping family." And there it was, the real resentment, finally surfacing. "Get out. Rowena, please. Get your stuff and get out, now. You're being unreasonable. I was trying to help." By humiliating me online, by making my private life into your public content without my consent. She gathered her ring light and props with shaking hands, tears starting to flow. Real tears this time, not the performative kind. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. "That's not my problem anymore." It was harsh, maybe too harsh. But I was done being the family member who absorbed everyone else's poor choices and emotional overflow. She left 20 minutes later, duffel bag in hand, promising to send me the money she owed for groceries. I watched her drive away and felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in months, my house was quiet again, peaceful. Mine, I made coffee in my imperfect kitchen and sat on my second-hand couch, watching morning light stream through windows I'd cleaned myself. This wasn't poverty. This wasn't failure. This was home. But Callista's video had already been posted, and it was about to take on a life of its own. The video got 43,000 views in the first 24 hours. I only knew because my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, knocked on my door Sunday evening, holding her iPad with a concerned expression. "Mija, is this you?" I watched myself appear on camera in all my morning glory messy hair, old pajamas, looking exactly like someone who'd been blindsided by their sister's social media ambush. The comments section was a mixed bag of sympathy, judgment, and unsolicited advice. "Poor girl, she looks so tired and defeated." This is what happens when you make bad financial decisions. "Her sister is so kind to document this journey." Why is she living like this when she clearly has family support? But it was the pinned comment that made my blood run cold. For those asking how to help, I've set up a GoFundMe to support Rowena's housing situation. Link in bio. Every little bit helps. I clicked through to Callista's profile. Sure enough, there was a fundraising campaign titled "Help My Sister Rebuild Her Life." The description painted me as someone who'd fallen on hard times and was too proud to ask for help. My photo, the one of me looking bewildered in my kitchen, was the banner image. The campaign had raised $2,847 in 18 hours. The recipient listed on the fundraiser, Callista's business PayPal account. I screenshot everything, then called the only person I could think of who might know what to do. Legal aid hotline. "This is Marcus." "Hi, I think my sister might be committing fraud." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a 24-hour diner with Elise Chen, a paralegal who specialized in digital exploitation cases. She was younger than I'd expected, with purple-streaked hair and multiple ear piercings, but her questions were sharp and professional. "So she filmed in your home without permission, created a fundraiser using your image without consent, and collected money supposedly for your benefit that she has no intention of giving you. That's correct? And you have evidence of all this." I showed her the screenshots, the text messages, the video itself. She took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "The good news is this is pretty straightforward legally," she said finally. "Identity theft, wire fraud, possibly defamation depending on what exactly she said about your circumstances. The bad news is your sister is about to face some serious consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "Criminal charges if the DA decides to prosecute, civil liability for damages, and definitely a very public legal mess if this story gets picked up by news outlets." I stirred my coffee, thinking, what are my options? You could file a police report tomorrow, or we could start with a cease and desist letter. Give her a chance to take down the content and return the money voluntarily. And if she doesn't, then we move to legal action. "But Rowena," she leaned forward, "are you prepared for this to get bigger? Once lawyers get involved, once there's a paper trail, this becomes a story." Social media fraud cases are trending right now. I thought about my quiet house, my anonymous life, my careful privacy. Then I thought about strangers on the internet pitying me based on lies. about money being raised in my name without my consent, about my sister turning my life into content for her personal brand. Send the letter, I said. When I checked the time, it was almost midnight. In 12 hours, Callista was scheduled to do a live Instagram session about supporting family through difficult transitions. Can you have it ready by noon tomorrow? Elise grinned. I like your style. The cease and desist letter was delivered at 12:47 p.m., 43 minutes into Callista's live Instagram session. I watched from my kitchen, laptop open, as her expression changed from practiced serenity to confusion to panic in real time. She was mid-sentence about holding space for loved ones in crisis when someone off camera handed her an envelope. The live chat exploded with questions. What's that? Did someone just serve her papers? Drama alert. Callista tried to maintain her composure, but I could see her hands shaking as she skimmed the letter. Her eyes widened as she read the words, cease and desist, unauthorized use of likeness, and immediate removal of fraudulent content. Miss A. I need to address some concerns that have been brought to my attention, she stammered. There seems to be some confusion about my recent post about my sister's situation. The chat moved too fast to read, but I caught glimpses: lawsuit, fraud, TA. The video and fundraiser were created with the best intentions, she continued. But it appears there were some miscommunications about consent and she stopped mid-sentence, probably reading the part of the letter that outlined potential criminal charges. I'm going to end the live stream here and address this privately with my family. Thank you all for your support during this difficult time. The screen went black. Within an hour, the GoFundMe was deleted. The video was taken down. Her Instagram story contained a vague apology about learning and growing and respecting boundaries. But the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots of everything had been saved and shared across multiple platforms. Reddit threads analyzed the timeline. TikTok users made reaction videos. Someone on Twitter even created a side-by-side comparison of Callista's wellness guru posts with her more recent struggling sister content. My phone started ringing around 3 p.m. Unknown numbers, probably journalists. I let them all go to voicemail. At 6 p.m., my parents called. Rowena, Dad's voice was tight with controlled anger. What exactly do you think you're doing? Protecting myself from fraud. Fraud? She's your sister. She was trying to help. By lying about my situation and taking money under false pretenses. You're blowing this completely out of proportion, Mom chimed in. Families work through problems privately, not through lawyers. Families also don't exploit each other for social media content. Callista made a mistake, Dad said. But involving lawyers, that's vindictive. No, that's consequences. Something Callista has never had to face. She's devastated, Mom said. She's been crying all day. Her reputation is ruined. Her reputation was built on lies and manipulation. Maybe it should be ruined. The line went quiet for a moment. You've changed, Dad said finally. This isn't the daughter we raised. You're right, I said. The daughter you raised would have apologized for making Callista face consequences for her actions. She would have let this slide to keep the peace. But that daughter was miserable. And you're happy now living alone in that, place? Yes, I said, looking around my small, imperfect, entirely mine kitchen. I actually am. They hung up without saying goodbye. By Wednesday, the story had been picked up by 3 news outlets and countless internet commentators. Wellness influencer accused of defrauding family member was trending on Twitter. BuzzFeed had reached out for comment. Someone had started a subreddit called Arya's Callista Exposed. The attention was overwhelming and mostly unwanted. My house had become a minor tourist destination for people driving by to take photos. I'd started closing my curtains during the day. But there were unexpected benefits, too. A local contractor who'd seen the coverage reached out to offer discounted services. A tile company donated materials for my bathroom renovation. Mrs. Rodriguez organized a neighborhood watch to keep the gawkers at bay. Most surprisingly, I heard from other people who'd been financially exploited by family members. My inbox filled with stories from siblings who'd had their credit ruined, children whose parents had stolen their identities, relatives who'd been guilted into funding other people's dreams while sacrificing their own. Thank you for fighting back. One message read, "My brother has been borrowing money from me for years and never paying it back. Watching you stand up for yourself gave me the courage to finally say no." That's when I realized this wasn't just about me and Callista anymore. It was about a pattern of behavior that too many families normalized, the expectation that one person should sacrifice their well-being for everyone else's comfort. On Thursday, Elise called with an update. "Good news and complicated news," she said. "The good news is Callista's agreed to return all the GoFundMe money and cover your legal fees. The complicated news is the IRS has decided to investigate her business practices." The IRS. Turns out this isn't the first time she's raised money for charitable purposes that ended up in her personal accounts. There are questions about tax compliance, business registration, all sorts of fun federal stuff. I felt a stab of something that might have been guilt. I didn't want to destroy her life. You didn't destroy anything. You just turned on the lights. If there was something ugly hiding in the dark, that's not your fault. Still, when Callista called me that evening, I answered. "The IRS wants to audit me," she said without preamble. "They're looking at 3 years of business records. I'm sorry. Are you? Because you could make this all go away. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." Was it a misunderstanding? Silence. "Callista, how many other fundraisers have there been? I don't know what you mean. How many times have you raised money for charity that ended up in your account? It's not that simple. The money was for awareness campaigns, and how many?" Another long pause. "Maybe 5 or 6 over the years." Jesus. I always meant to use the money correctly, but expenses come up, and cash flow gets complicated, and you've been running a scam. I've been trying to help people, mental health awareness, environmental causes, community support. With other people's money that you kept, I kept some of it to cover operating costs. Callista, you don't have an organization. You have an Instagram account." She started crying, then reel. Ugly sobs that made my chest ache despite everything. "I'm going to lose everything," she whispered. "My followers, my brand, probably my apartment. I might go to jail." "You might. Actions have consequences, even for family, especially for family. People who love you are supposed to help you be better, not enable you to hurt others." "I never meant to hurt anyone." "But you did. You hurt me. You hurt the people who donated money thinking it was going to actual charity. You hurt your own credibility. So what am I supposed to do now? Figure out who you are without the performance. Get a job. Pay your taxes. Stop treating other people's sympathy like your personal ATM. That's it. That's your advice. That's my boundary. I love you, but I won't enable you anymore. And I won't let you use me as a prop in your victim narrative." She hung up without saying goodbye. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a producer at a daytime talk show. They wanted me to appear on a segment about family financial abuse. I declined politely, but started thinking about how common this problem really was. That's when I decided to use my unexpected platform for something useful. I started a blog called Family Money Boundaries, sharing resources for people dealing with financial manipulation by relatives. Within a month, it had 10,000 subscribers. Stories poured in from people who'd been guilted into co-signing loans, pressured to fund siblings' business ventures, or manipulated into giving up inheritances. The blog connected me with financial counselors, legal aid organizations, and therapists who specialized in family trauma. I learned that what I'd experienced had a name: financial abuse, and it was far more common than I'd realized. 6 months after the cease and desist letter, I received an unexpected visitor. My father stood on my porch, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Can we talk?" he asked. I led him to my living room, which was finally starting to look like a real home. The walls were painted, the floors refinished, and I'd found some decent furniture at estate sales. "The house looks good," he said, settling into my second-hand armchair. "Thank you. I owe you an apology." He ran his hands through his graying hair. "The whole thing with Callista's, we knew she had problems with money, but we didn't realize how bad it had gotten." "How bad has it gotten?" "The IRS audit uncovered some things. She owes about 40,000 in back taxes and penalties. There's also a civil lawsuit from one of the charities she claimed to be fundraising for." I absorbed this. "And Mom, your mother is struggling to accept that we might have enabled this behavior. She's in therapy now, trying to understand why she always defended Callista, even when she knew something was wrong." "What about you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking a lot about that dinner, about how quickly we turned on you for making an independent decision, how we made you feel like the problem when you were actually the only one being honest. I could have handled it better. I could have been more direct about not wanting to fund the retreat. Maybe, but you shouldn't have had to. We put you in an impossible position." He looked around the room again. "This place, it suits you. You seem more yourself here. I am more myself here. Callista's getting help," he said. "Real help. She's in a program for people with spending disorders, and she's working with a tax attorney. But she wanted me to tell you she understands why you can't have a relationship right now." "I never said I couldn't have a relationship. I said I couldn't have the same relationship." "What does that mean?" "It means if she wants to be in my life, she has to be honest. No more performances. No more manipulation. No more treating me like a supporting character in her story. If she can do that, we can try to rebuild something real." Dad nodded slowly. "And what about us, your mother and me?" "Same rules apply." "Fair enough." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. It took courage to stand up to us the way you did." "It shouldn't have required courage to say no to my family." "No, it shouldn't have but it did, and you found it anyway." After he left, I sat in my quiet house and felt something shift. Not resolution exactly, but possibility. The idea that relationships could change and evolve instead of just ending or staying toxic forever. 1 year after buying my $900 house, I hosted a housewarming party. Nothing fancy, just neighbors, a few new friends, and Aunt Corinne, who drove down from Sacramento with a bottle of champagne and a houseplant she'd grown herself. The house was transformed but not finished. The kitchen had new cabinets and functioning appliances. The bathroom was fully renovated. The living room was cozy and bright, but there were still projects ahead. The master bedroom needed work, and I wanted to add a small garden in the backyard. "You did this," Corinne said, raising her glass as we stood on my repaired porch. "From that disaster I saw in photos to this beautiful home. All you, with help," I corrected, gesturing toward Mrs. Rodriguez, who was teaching some kids to plant herbs in my side yard. With community, she agreed. That's different from help. Help implies charity. Community implies belonging. As the evening wound down, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a photo of a small apartment with minimal furniture and a message, 6 months sober from retail therapy. Starting small, but starting honest. Thank you for showing me it was possible. K. I stared at the message for a long time. It was the first communication I'd had from Callista since our phone call about the IRS audit. No dramatic declarations, no requests for forgiveness or reconciliation. Just an update and a thank you. I typed back, proud of you for doing the work. The apartment looks peaceful. She responded immediately. It is. Scary but peaceful. How's the house? Good. Still a work in progress. Aren't we all? I smiled and put my phone away. Maybe someday we'd rebuild our relationship. Maybe we wouldn't. But for the first time, the uncertainty didn't feel threatening. It felt like space room for both of us to grow into better versions of ourselves. 18 months later, I was featured in a home renovation magazine. Not because my house was particularly fancy, but because my story had resonated with their readers. The article was titled How a 900R House Taught Me to Value Myself, and it focused on the relationship between physical space and emotional boundaries. The photographer captured my favorite corner, the reading nook I'd created by the front window, with built-in shelves holding books about home improvement, personal finance, and yes, some mystery novels that Callista had recommended during one of our tentative phone conversations. The magazine came out the same week my parents visited for the first time since Dad's apology. Mom was still learning to navigate our new dynamic, but she complimented my garden and asked genuine questions about my renovation choices. When she offered to help with the dishes, I said yes instead of insisting I could handle everything myself. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. I've been reading your blog, she admitted as we cleaned up after dinner. Some of those stories, I recognize our family in them. Which parts? The way we made you responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. The way we punished you for having boundaries. She dried a plate carefully. I don't know how to fix 28 years of conditioning, but I want to try. It's not about fixing the past, I said. It's about doing better going forward. Are we doing better? I considered this. Mom was making an effort. Dad had admitted his mistakes. Callista was working on herself. I was learning to accept partial progress instead of demanding perfect resolution. We're trying, I said. That's more than we were doing before. The evening ended with them helping me plan my next project, converting the garage into a home office where I could expand my consulting work. As they drove away, Mom rolled down her window. The house looks beautiful, honey, but more importantly, you look happy. I am happy, I said, and realized it was completely true. 2 years after that disastrous family dinner, I woke up in my fully renovated bedroom, sunlight streaming through curtains I'd sewn myself. The house was quiet except for the coffee maker's gentle gurgling and the sound of Mrs. Rodriguez's rooster next door. I padded to the kitchen, poured coffee into my favorite mug, a handmade ceramic piece I'd bought from a local artist, and stepped onto my back porch. The garden was thriving tomatoes, herbs, and the fruit tree I'd planted last spring. My phone showed several notifications, a message from Callista with photos of her new job at a plant nursery, an email from someone who'd read my blog and wanted advice about setting boundaries with financially manipulative parents, a text from Aunt Corinne asking if I wanted to visit her new pottery studio next weekend, and, surprisingly, a message from Dad. Saw your magazine article at the doctor's office. Very proud. Love you. It was such a simple message, but it represented something that had seemed impossible 2 years ago, unconditional support from my father. I settled into my porch chair with my coffee and laptop. I had a blog post to finish about the difference between helping family and enabling family. And later, I was meeting with a contractor about possibly adding a small rental unit to help other people get back on their feet. The $900 house had taught me that sometimes you have to lose your family to find yourself. And sometimes finding yourself helps your family find their way back to you. Not the same way as before, but better, more honest, more sustainable. My phone rang. Callista. Hey, she said. I know it's early, but I had an idea for your rental unit project. I'm listening. What if it wasn't just affordable housing? What if it was specifically for people escaping financial abuse, like a bridge housing program with built-in support services? I sat up straighter. Tell me more. I've been working with this nonprofit that helps domestic abuse survivors, and they say financial abuse is one of the biggest barriers to people leaving toxic situations. But there are almost no resources specifically for that. And you think my little rental unit could make a difference? I think it could be a pilot program, a proof of concept. And if it works, we could help other people start similar programs. Exactly. We talked for an hour, building on the idea, refining the concept. For the first time since we were kids, we were collaborating instead of competing, working towards something bigger than ourselves. After we hung up, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the morning light shift across the neighborhood I'd come to love. The house that had cost me my old family relationships had given me something more valuable, the knowledge that I was worth more than my utility to others. The $900 house wasn't just a real estate investment. It was the down payment on a life where I got to decide who I was and what I valued, where my space was my own, my decisions were my own, and my relationships were based on mutual respect instead of obligation. I opened my laptop and started writing. Home isn't just about the physical space you inhabit. It's about the emotional space you create for yourself, boundaries that protect your peace, relationships that honor your worth, and the courage to choose yourself even when it's difficult. Sometimes the best investment you can make isn't in property or stocks or someone else's dreams. Sometimes the best investment is in your own right to exist authentically, even if it costs you everything you thought you wanted. I paused, looking around at my imperfect, beautiful, entirely mine home, especially then. The end.